Welcome guys, it's Justice again here from tutorialscamp.com. So let's continue on our Dart programming tutorials, right? So currently I've gotten to data types and variables. So we are going to cover everything from top down, right? So these are the things that we are going to cover. These are the data types that support, right? Number, string, Boolean, list, map, dynamic, var, and then final. These guys. This final and then var, they are not actually a real data type, right? They are something that I will explain, right? You need to understand them, know how to use them in your program, right? So I'm going to explain it. They are not actually a data type, but they are kind of things that helps to simplify the use of our data type. So I'm going to explain it to you shortly, right? So what are data types and then what? Variables, right? So let's say, right, in your whenever you create an application, okay, whenever you create an application, right, you will enter your username, right? You enter your username and then your email address and then your profile details and your bio details, right? Your biography details. So let's say when you close the application, and then next time you go and then open the same application and you log in. You see that the details that you entered, your name, your email, and then your bio, they are still there. So where are these data saved, right? Where are they saved? Now there are two things involved, right? If you want some data to be saved permanently, it's either you save them on a file and then or a database and then retrieve this data later, okay? But there are some data that change often, okay? Inside the application there are some data that change often, and you need to manipulate this data often in your application. So you need to a way to store them in the application memory, so that you can, because it changes often, you can access it and then write some logic to perform some operation on it, right? So these are variables. They are containers for storing data, okay? And the data that we want to store, right? It could be on it can be on a different format. It can be in a list form, or it can be a number-s string in a list form, map, which is key value pairs, and then a lot of data types. But these are the only data types that support. Okay, so variables, they are the containers. Look at it as a container where we store data in our application, right? And these data, they are of different types. These are the types that and the types. These are the types that these data are of, right? So inside your application, right, when you run your application, the user system, right, the system will allocate a memory for for the application, so that it can store some necessary data that the application need, right? Yeah, it can store some necessary data in the application that the system need in the application to run successfully. Okay, so those are data type. These are data types and variables. So now let's take on everything one by one and then talk about it, right? So let's go to that part and then let me show you. So now in that, before you can actually use a variable, you need to declare it. Okay, so this is the syntax to declare a variable. Let me zoom very well so that you guys can understand. This is the syntax to define a variable. Let me bring it here. So declare a variable, syntax variable declaration syntax. I wish this thing can go here a little bit. Alright, that's good. So the syntax is this. That is a statically programming language, right? So it's not a dynamic programming language like JavaScript and PHP, right? It's a statically type. So whatever variable you need to declare, you need to start with a specific data type that variable is going to hold. So we start with data name, data type, right? Data type, and then variable name. This is called variable declaration. This is the syntax for variable declaration. Okay, now this is how we assign. When after you have declared a variable, then you can go ahead and assign a value to it, right? So as this is how the assignment is done. The syntax of the assignment is this: variable name, and then what? The value. This is the variable name which represents it, and then the value which represents the data that what you want to store in your what application. Now I know this is kind of very confusing, right? In other ways, you can what declare your variable and also what assign it on a single line or at the same time. This is how you can go about it, right? This is how you can go about the variable name and then the value. I hope it's clear now, right? So determine the data type, which is either one of these guys here, right? One of these guys here, based on the value that you want this variable here to hold, right? So think of this guy as a container. Think of it as some container, right? In that container, what kind of data does it going to hold, right? The data type is going to hold. Is it, let's say, the data type is equal to, is it numbers or string or list or map, right? Then you specify the data type here, then the exact value that is going to be put into what this container right here, right? I hope that clears everything, right? Very easy to understand. So that's the syntax for declaring a variable, right? Please take note of it, right? If you're a new programmer, I suggest that you pick some pencil and then some sheet and then jot this thing down. Jot it down somewhere, okay? Variable declaration and then assignment is very basic. I know most of you are already aware of it, but since there are new programmers, a newbie here, so I suggest they write something down, right? So that's how to go about it now. So let's try and then make use of this guy here. Let's try it here. So let's say we want to store the ages of a particular person, of a particular student in our application. So age, normally age, they are numbers, right? So it is integers, right? So we will do something like int, then I'll talk about int later, but don't worry what it is, I'll talk about it. And then age, right? Age now, right? So this is variable declaration here, right? We have not assigned anything to it, we have declared a variable, right? Which is something like this, okay? So we can later go ahead and then assign a value to it like this, age maybe 20, okay? Don't mind these guys because I've not used this and that's why it is complaining. This pop-up, that's how they have been programming their website. When you get an error and then you have not used a variable, it will keep following you unless you use the variable. So if you print something like this, then it will go like print the age, it will go. Just watch it. You see, bam, that's it. So now what we have done here is that we have declared a variable, we have created a container, okay? That container we are going to store int. I'll talk about int. Int is a number, that means you are going to store integer into the container. But remember, inside the container we have not put in any number into it, any data into it, right? So now here we point to the directory, the address of the data of the container, and then we put this data into it, okay? Two very steps, right? Variable declaration and assignment, okay? Variable declaration, variable assignment, okay? Value assignment, okay? So value assignment, you're assigning a value to the variable, yeah? So and then now we are printing this guy here to the age, the value that is inside the container, which is 20. We are printing it to on the console inside our application. So if we hit run, you should get 20 here. You can see I've gotten 20 here, right? Perfect, right? Now let me talk about, we followed two very steps here. First, we declared our variable and we assign a value to it, right? But I also told you that we can do the same thing in the same way, in a single line, right? We can declare it and then assign the value easily on it, right? So what we can do is that we can create integer age h2, and then we assign a value to it like 45. This is what I hate about this thing. I hate this. What I hate about this, they are their online environment. When you are using it, this pop-up will worry you unless when you create a variable and you don't use it. It will worry you unless you use it, and then. But because we are just using that for we just want to understand that, and then further our studies with that's why I didn't set up a local environment on our system, right? We want to make this thing quick and then proceed to our Flutter application and then start creating our Android application, iOS, and a desktop application, and then some for web, right? So look at this. This is variable declaration, right? So everything is on a run single line, right? Declaration, that's not the right spelling, and and assignment, right? So we have declared a variable. This is a container, right? And that container, it's going to it is an integer, meaning it's going to hold an integer value, right? And this guy here, it is an integer which represents the value that is being put into this container right here. Okay, now if you declare a variable and then you don't assign anything to it, it is going to return something called null. Okay, so if I print this thing run, you should see what will happen. Okay, you see we have got the non-nullable local variable age must be assigned before it can be used. So when you declare a variable and you don't assign anything to it, the value will be nullable, right? Note it down very carefully. Okay, it's going to be nullable. If this was to be a Java application, Java or JavaScript, you would have seen that the output would have been null here. But before, because it has this JVM that is able to compile applications into web and then iOS and then Android. Sometimes it doesn't allow you to do some specific things, right? Sometimes when something is not something is empty, it will not allow you to use it, right? That's why this error come up, right? So because there's no data in this container right here, variable container, right, it is not allowing me to print it out. So you can see it generated an error. But what I was expecting, I should have get a nullable variable. Okay, so that's something I should take very note of, very clearly. Okay, very clear. So I hope that answer. So that's variables for you. So let's talk about data types, right? Let's talk about data types. Okay, so now I said that it supports this kind of data types 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But these guys, they are not really data types. These two guys, they are not really data types, but we use it to it helps us to modifies the functionality of our data type or data types for declaration. Okay, so let's look at numbers. Numbers, they are numbers 1, 2, 3, and then any number is a number, either float or double, like decimal value numbers or non-decimal value numbers, right? Those are all numbers, right? You have decimal value numbers and non-decimal value numbers, negative and then positive numbers. They are all numbers, right? But in that, the only number that it comes with is called that has two special data type for numbers, which is called integer and integer and double. Now integer is any decimal number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without any point dot 0 or 0.40, right? Any decimal number is integer. And we have double. Let me make an example of integer for you. It is any number like, damn it. So example of an integer is what, like 1, 2, 3, or what, 4, right? And any example of a double is what, decimal numbers. You know, decimal numbers, they are usually always point something, or 0 point something, or point something, like this guy there, 0.5 or 40.5, so and so. They are all what, double, which is decimal numbers, right? So these are the things that you should take note of, right? So let's look at how we can actually use integer and what, double data type in our application, right? So let's declare a variable here. You have already seen variable already. I just explained, right? That's what I'm saying. You should be what, taking note of certain things that what I explained. Because if you don't take note and then you just watch it, oh boom, you wake up one day and then watch, forget everything. So int, when the integer, we use it with this keyword int, right? We don't write the whole integer, no, we use int, okay? And then it holds a, let's say we want to create a variable age, and then it's going to take a value of 20, right? So we have created an integer, right? This is an age, and it's going to, it is of data type of what, int. It is going to take a value of 20, right? If you do this, then it's like, you see, we have got an error, right? Because this is not an what, we have got an error. A value of type double can't be assigned to a variable type int, right? Oh, I wish I can scroll this up so that I can explain it to you. This their pop-up page very well. I wish they could have some a minimizable button or a cancel button here so that you can force it to do something, but it will never go unless you have created an error here, right? So let me look at this. All right, so you can see 20.60, it is pointing out error because this is what, this is double, this is a decimal value, this is not what, an integer. This is rather an integer without a point value. So 20, the error should go, the error should go now. You can see it is gone. So now it is complaining because I've not used this thing. It is complaining, but remember, this is not an error. It is just pointing you some, trying to teach you something. So it's just an info, right? So this is this is how we use an integer, right? So you can print it out like print like age, okay? You can print it out. You print, if you click, you should get 20 here. You can see you have gotten it, right? So maybe, I don't know if I've talked about, okay, in the last video I'll show you what this guy does, right? This print method is just taking a value and then what, output it to the console or the screen, okay? So it's just a method. I'll be talking about methods and functions and then how to use them, pass value into it, and then how to pass by value reference, and then pass by whatever, a lot, right? So this is how integers are. Okay, so now let's talk about double, right? These are double values that I said they are point something, okay? So always remember that double values are what, always point what, point something, 20.0 or 0 point something, or something point 0 point something, or 0 point something, or something point something, right? Those are what, double. Okay, we are still on data type, so remember. Right, we have gotten it, 0 point something. Let's move on to the next data type, right? Strange, right? Strange, okay. String is a data type, right? That is any value that is enclosed with what, a double quote or what, a single quote. Any value you enclose, damn it. Any value you enclose it with what, double quote or what, a single quote, it becomes what, it becomes a string, okay? So they are normally text, right? Text. So let's do something like, let's say we want to print out a name. We can use something like string my name, right? And then we use something like justice, right? So you can see I have enclosed this guy here with what? A double quote. Okay, that's what make this guy what? A string. I can also decide to make it what? A single quote, and there shouldn't be any error, right? Okay, there shouldn't be any error, right? Now if you remove this code, you should get an error, right? You see I'm getting an error, right? Justice undefined in justice. Okay, yeah, because this thing, because this guy here is supposed to be what? A string, but I'm trying to say it is as valid. So that's it. This guy should go, this error should go, gone. Okay, so that's how strings are. Okay, so if you want to print it out, you can just print it out and do something like my name, and then you should get justice printed out here. You know, it's taking some time because this is running in the browser, right? So there we go. Justice, that's the result that I was expecting. Okay, now one thing I want to make it clear to you, right? Let's say if you define an integer that is like age, okay, and oh, this is annoying, and then 20, right? If you define an integer and then you assign 20 and close with this guy, this double quote here, right? This value right here is just a string, not an integer. Please, I'm pointing out something here, please take note. Okay, this guy here, it is what? A string, not an integer. That's what I'm getting, but this type, a value of string can't be assigned to a variable of type what? Integer. It means this variable is what? Has a type of what? Integer, and I'm trying to assign what? A string value to it, which is not what? Going to work. Imagine putting let's say what can I use an example? Imagine trying to put this my keyboard right inside this little cap here. Can you see this keyboard inside this little cap here? Can it go inside? No. Why? I can rather put this keyboard here inside a big what? A big box, but I cannot put this keyboard inside what? Inside this cap here, right? Because this cap, the value that this cap can accept is what? Liquid value, right? Either a cafe or what? A water. Okay, I hope that clarifies everything. So perfect, right? So that's why it's now it's giving its component, right? So you need to give it the perfect what? The right data type what this guy accept, and then the error should go. There it is, right? So take note of that very clearly. Okay, so let's move on to Boolean, right? Now Booleans, they are when they are true or false values, right? Let's say inside our application we want to make something inside our application. We may try to perform some what operation that should output what? A single value, either true what or false, right? Either true or false. So that case we use what? Booleans. Okay, which output true what? True or false what? True or false value. Okay, so we have declared a variable of integer 80. Now we can do something like if age equal to 20, right? Print age is what? 20. Print age is 20, right? I know I've not talked of this if statement right here, but don't worry, I'll talk about it when we get to it, right? So what I'm doing here is that I'm checking if this age has a value of what? 20. If it has a value of 20, then I'll print age is what? 20. Okay, but if the value of age is not equal to 20, then I'm not printing anything out here. Okay, so if statement for the new beginners, I'll talk about it, right? So don't worry about what is going on, just be focus on the focus on the Boolean value that data type I'm trying to point out here, right? So if I click on run, we should get age is 20 printed out here. You can see I've gotten age is 20 printed out here, right? But if I change age is 275 because age is 20, not 20, we shouldn't get anything printed out here. There we go, right? So you have seen how it is to perform some value, right? Now let's say I'll do something like this, bool, okay, and I say this is equal to true. If age then run. Okay, so now the bool, it represents what? True or false value. Remember what I pointed out here, true or false value, right? So instead of using an integer here, I'm saying that bool equal to what? True, right? This bool is equal to what? True, right? So if age is equal to true, then print something like age is what? 20. But if I change this value to what? False, then there will be nothing printed out what? Here, because age is not true here. You see, there's nothing printed out here. Okay, so that's Boolean for you, right? You should just note that they print out what? True or false value, right? We use it to perform what? Some logical is logical, right? If operations and other things. Okay, so note that. So let's talk about list. Okay, so list, they are actually like arrays, right? Let's say we have you know, remember I said that, remember list, they are a way of what? Storing multiple values inside what? A single container. Okay, so remember I said that inside a variable, right, we can actually hold we can actually put one value inside what? A single variable. Okay, but what if we want to put multiple values inside the same single variable? What we will do? What will we do? That's where what? List come in, right? So we can put a list of different, like list of student name, list of student age inside one particular what? Variable or container, right? So this is how we go about it. List and then what? Student let's go by names. Sorry, I think it's capital names and then Lancaster's and then Peter John. Okay, so that's a list for you. Line 2, the value of the local variable names isn't used. Try removing the variable or using it, right? So because I'm not using this, then that's why it is compared. There's not an error. Okay, so now this name right here, right, is holding a value of what? Justice, Peter, and what? John. Instead of holding a single value, it is holding what? These three what? Names, right? Because traditionally this is what we do. Let's say if we want to declare a username, we could have do something like strange and then name one and then we'll do something like justice, right? Justice and then strange name 2 and we'll do something like Peter. Oh boy, do something like Peter and then strange name tree equal to what? John. Okay, it is comparing of this guy here. I think this is list. Okay, so I look at that. Cool. There you go. Okay, so it is comparing because I've not used all these variables, right? It is just giving me some info about what is going on in my code, right? They are not errors, right? So traditionally, this is what we would do. Like we would have saved this variable here into what? A single container, into a single variable called name1, and then save this Peter to into a single variable name2, and then save this one to into a single variable what? Name3, right? But this is a waste of time. Okay, imagine if we have like 1,000 or 200 names that we want to save in our application, right? What will we do? Will you actually type them one by one, name 1, name 2, name 3, name 3, name 1, up to name 1,000 in the application? No, that's stupid, right? And a waste of time. So in that case, we create a single variable and then what? A single list variable, and then what? We store all the different kind of values in what? Inside that single what? Inside that single variable. So you can see that minimize our work, right? It saves time and then what? Make our code what? Efficient, right? So I recommend what? You take note of data types and then know which data type what you must use in a what? In each particular place when what? Necessary, right? So you need to take note of certain things, right? List, we are going to cover it much details. Okay, we will cover it because you need to look at how we can use for loops to run in populate all the data in the list, and then how we can add the list, remove list at a certain stage, and then talk about it, right? But this is very long, right? We need to cover for loops and then a lot of things, right? If I say I'm covering list, most beginners will be lost here, right? So I want to just give you an introduction of what list work, right? So that I will cover it in a separate video, because if I'm talking about list alone, it can take up to 30 minutes, right? It's a lot of work, right? I need to understand, so I will talk about it alone, right? Before I will talk about for loop and then I'll talk about it alone, then the beginners can get the whole understanding. I don't want to leave anyone behind, right? So let's move on to the next data type, which is map, right? Map. So map, they are like maps, they are a way of restore this is a list of what? Names in our application, right? Names in our application. But let's say we want to save the age of Justice here, right? And then the age of Peter here, and then the age of John too. So what will we do? Can we do something like this? Justice age 12, Peter age 40, John age 60. No, this is stupid. And imagine this is even what? An integer, and this is what? These guys are what? Strange values. They are not actually what? Integers. And these guys, they are very hard to what? How will I even write some logic to what? Separate these guys and then query out them, right? So they are stupid. You don't arrange things like this. This is not the right format to what? To store what? Some list of users name, right? So what you can actually do is that you can use maps to do it, right? So you can do something like map and then names and age, right? Then you can do something like justice okay, so list, you can do something like I want to make things simple for you, okay? I don't know why this thing is not complete. Is it a capital you know, sometimes error. Okay, it's just mapped. It's not mapped like this, it's maps, right? Sorry, I just forgot what it is. So maps, that's how it is, right? So we can write some logic to actually create this stuff from it. It depends on the data that what you are saving into the map, and then you look at the data and then write some logic to what actually separate them out, right? So this is the data of justice, right? So name of justice, we can do something like justice, and then name age, you can do something like 12, right? So now this data alone belongs to what? Justice. Okay, this data alone belongs to what? Justice. Later we can write a query to format it as, right? Or simply we can try this out, this guy. Okay, then can just do something like this. This is actually the perfect way we go about, right? So you copy this, then the second name is what? Peter 40. Then so you do something like Peter and then 40, right? Then you go with John 60. Don't worry, you don't. I'm sure you are really confused of what is going on here. I know, but those of you who are familiar with JSON and the rest, you already know of what I'm talking about, right? But don't worry, I'll cover everything when we get to future and then asynchronous programming in that. Okay, I just want to give an overview of what maps are. Okay, so maps we use to store data in what? Key value what? Pairs. Okay, so you can see that now when we can write a logic to what? Filter up the data of the what? The first user, which has a name of what? Justice, and his age is what? 12. And if you come to the second user, he has a name of what? Peter, his age is what? 40. The third user, he has a name of John, and his age is what? 60. I think I'm missing something out here. Now what you should know is that inside the last one, don't put a comma here. Okay, yeah, don't put a comma there. So it depends on the data that you are actually what? Putting inside the logic, right? If you have something like this, you can actually put it inside. This is called an array box. Okay, you are putting it inside an array. We can write a logic to filter them out, right? But if it's just a simple data, you don't need to put it inside an array. Okay, you can do something like this. Let's say if you want to single data of a person, you can go with his name and then like justice. His name should be justice, and then his name is justice, and then age can be what? 50. Okay, that's good. Age should be 50. Okay, that's age should be 50. Okay, now look at what I've done here. Okay, look at this list and then what I've done here. Let me point them out to you. So ask yourself these things that I've done here. Let's take the list first, right? So justice, how will one know that he's either going to put a string here or integer here? How will one know, right? How will one know that he's either going to put a string here or this value, this guy is going to accept a list of what? String, numbers, double, or what? How is it? Which data type is going to accept, right? That's something that you should ask yourself, right? So there's something called generic types. Okay, those who are aware of object-oriented programming already, they know of generics and those stuff, right? But because I've taken this to a beginner level, that's why I didn't thought about that, because I was going to confuse others, right? So how can you determine this is going to accept what? list of string or whatever values that is going to accept, right? So we use something called generics. Okay, this is what the generic function represents, right? So you can see this is our what, a string value. So inside we put what, a string here. Note that very carefully. Okay, so this string, I made a mistake here. So this string represents the type of data that this guy is going to what, accept. Now if you put for something like 5 here, when you compile it, you will definitely get what, you will definitely get what, an error, because this string cannot accept what, a value of what, 5, right? Note that very carefully. Okay, the same with map. Okay, the same with map. This is the first value that we have put into the map, and this is the second value that we have put into the map, right? You know, map, they accept what, single value, they are key value pairs, right? So it's also a generic format, right? So now inside the map 2, we tell the map that, hey, what value are we actually going to put inside the first value, and what value is the second one going to accept? Now you can see this is a string, right? And this guy is what, an integer, right? So we do something like string and then what, integer. Okay, this is completely the perfect way to what, store values. Okay, it's completely the perfect way to what, store values, right? But now if you have something like this, something like a list, right, that, and you neglect that out, that will be able to what, figure out that the values when inside this guy, the value this list accepted what, strange. Okay, but if you neglectly put what, a 4 here, it is going to what, throw an error, right? But if you don't, that is what, smart enough to figure it out that this guy here accept what, a string. But as a programmer, you need to make things easy for yourself, right? You need to put the string, make use of these guys that I'm pointing out here yourself, so that it will make things easy for you yourself, right? So that you won't end up confusing yourself, and then what, other remote programmers that you'll be working with, right? So that's how map and then list, that's the logic behind it, right? Please write something down, right? Sometimes it's confusing when you know a lot of programming languages, like when you are aware of Python, Java, and then other programming languages. Sometimes it is confusing. You may even end up what, confusing yourself. But what if you get a concept, that's it, right? You know, all programming languages, the concept, they are the same. Is what syntax differences. Okay, so coding is not difficult. Just must pick one programming language and what, master it, right? You can easily learn other programming languages, right? Just that you will need to what, be learning different syntaxes, right? So let's move on to the other one, which is called dynamic. Okay, now dynamic, there's something that I want to explain here. Dynamic, right? Let's say when we define a variable of type dynamic, I don't know if my internet is still okay. So my internet is not working, that's why when I was writing some of the logic, we were not getting some of the alerts, alert again. Sorry, error, pop-up error again. Sorry for that. Okay, it's connected now. So when you call something dynamic, right, and then age, okay, and then you do something like age, right? Dynamic meaning, right, this value that we have assigned into this age, right, we can later go ahead and what, change the value of what, this guy here. Okay, we can change the value here, this age here, into what, an integer string, right? We can do something like justice. Okay, we can change it and it will print out justice without getting any errors. Just check. You should get justice here. So we can see, so what is the difference, right? So when you put dynamic inside the data type, then you are telling that hey, that, right, I've put in a value here, but forget about the value that I put in it, right? Forget about its data type and then value, right? Whenever I change it, allow me to change it. Whatever value I assign to it, please use it, okay? Allow me to change it, right? So that's the dynamic data type, right? Very easy, right? Now let's move on to something called a var, right? A var. So these are the JavaScript guys. H1 and then let's say 40. Okay. So now this var represents what? The value of this. We use the var actually to what? Initialize variables, right? Those who are familiar with JavaScript already, they know what the var does, right? They know what it is. It used to declare variables, but it tells Java specify, identify the value of what the value assigned to this variable and figure out which data type is it, right? So now when that say 40, that knows, that is smart to know that this type here is what? An integer. So it assumes that this variable here have a data type of what? Integer. So that means when you later go ahead and what? Assign a string to this guy, it is going to give you what? Error. Okay, it is going to give you an error. You can see line 5, the value of the local variable age isn't used. Try. Okay, this is the info and this is the error. Line 6, a value of type strings can be assigned to a variable of type what? Integer, right? It is saying integer because this is an integer. That is smart enough to identify here that this variable has a type of what? Integer. Okay. Now when we try to assign a string to it, because this has a variable a type of integer and you are assigning a string to it, it is going to give you what? An error, right? You can see we have gotten an error here, right? So that's the difference between var and then what? Dynamic. Okay, dynamic, it doesn't care whatever the type it is, it will allow you to what? Or assign whatever type or value to it, right? But var, once you assign a value to it, right, you cannot change the type, right? But you can rather change it what? Value, but the value must be of the same what? Data type. So you can change it to 54 and then the error should go, right? The error should go. If you print it out, we should get 54 on the console. Alright, so you can see I've gotten 54 here on the console, right? So that's how that works. Okay, now there's one thing that I want to cover, right? Please take note of this guy here, right? These two guys, right? Dynamic and then var, right? I want to point out another one too that you should take very care of, which is what? Final, right? Which is final. Now the final functions like this: fh2 and then let's say you assign a value of what? 50 to it. You see, assign a value of 50 to it. Now you see that these two guys here, right? At first, when we declare it and assign a value to it, we have the opportunity to what? Reassign what? A value to it, reassign the value or change the value, right? You can see that when we use the var and then we assign a value to it, we can still have the ability to change its value, right? So now the value of 30 here becomes what? Justice, right? The value of this age here has become what? Justice. And now the value of this age 1, which is 40, is now what? 54, right? But when you use the final data type to a variable, right, you cannot change it what? Value and type again. It's final, right? Not the not the difference here, please. Not the difference here. You can actually write something down. Okay, so if I'm trying to do something like h2 equal to 45, I should get error. You see, line 9, the final variable age can only be set, right? Can only be set once, right? Try making it 2 non-final, right? So that is it, right? If you once you define it, That's it. You can't change its value in your application, right? This we normally use it in our application when, let's say, inside our application, right? We want some value to be what, a constant, right? We want some value to be what, constant. Let's say what value can even make, we can even do it constant. What. Okay, so we can use something like, let's say we have defined, we are building an what, employee management application, right? When we assign a particular employee to a department, right? Let's say we the managers, we have exactly made our mind that this employee is going to be in, as long as he's going to work for this company, then he's going to be in what, the backend department, right? It's never going to be, we are never going to promote him or put him to the front end department. It's going to be at the backend department, right? So when you are building this logic inside your application, that particular employee, you assign the final keyword, what, its value, right? Its data type, meaning you are not ready to what, to change it, right? You don't want to change it in your application. His position should be remain what, constant, as long as it's in the what, in this company. Okay, so that's very simple to understand, right? So take note of this guys here, this dynamic and then var here, right? I think I have something that I can, okay, I think maybe you can take note of this guy too. It will broaden your understanding very clear. Forget about this thing, right? Forget about this guy here. So this sentence more that I'll prepare for you, right? Dynamic and then the var, I was just trying to show you the difference and the note that maybe how you can take note of it, what, in your what, jot book or whatever, right? So note that the dynamic is of type integer, right? It accepts, because the value here is an integer, it uses it to identify at what, 8 type, right? Changing value of b from 1 to 5 is possible, and you can also change it what value here, but here you can also change the value, but since the data type is different, it will generate what, an error here, right? And here once you declare it, you can't change it, right? So this will be an error, this will be an error, right? Very basic to understand. Okay, I don't know if you can see this query. Let me try and make it big. I don't know what's wrong with this. Line 11, the name v is already defined. Oh, I'm not trying to do something, I'm just trying to teach you something. But let me change it and let this thing go so that I can make it clear to you. Still, it's just giving me some, don't mind it, right? So if you can see it, that's it, right? That's it. Just take note of it and then jot it down in your what. Okay, it's clear now. You can see it's clear. Jot it down in your what, in your jot book, and then remember it all the time. Okay, so that's variables and then data types for you. These are the things that we have covered so far. Okay, so thank you for watching. If you find any difficulties, please let me know in the comment box below. Okay, and also I've published something on my blog. Okay, so let's see, if you want to know more about me, you can find you can go to my blog and then tutorialscamp.com. okay, tutorialscamp.com. all right, so that's the name, tutorialscamp, just as the channel of this name, right? So you can visit this and then have a look of some of the tutorials, then the teachings that I've been publishing online, some of the tests I've been written, and then things, and then have a look and then explore certain things. Okay, so my door is open. If you don't understand anything, please let me know in the comment section below. Okay, thanks for watching, and then I will see you in the next video. I think what we have to cover now. So we are going to cover data operators, right? There are some operators we need to perform some mathematical operation, right? This list, there's something wrong with this, right? This list that I posted something earlier, it doesn't cover all. We need to cover some features and then stuff and then. So there will be some other things after we cover this. I may add 2 or 3 things to it, then we will cover it and then we will end the that and then focus on what Flutter, right? So thank you for watching, guys, and then I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day.